Lawyers. What's the stupidest reason you've been asked to sue for? And what was the outcome? I saw photos of a horribly dead couple. They had a son who was an amateur race car driver, and they ignored a fence, several no trespassing signs, and security guards to go stand in a restricted area and film their son's race. A crash happened, they got destroyed, and the son then sued, saying that security shouldn't have physically restricted them from entering that area. I don't know how it ended. I hope it ended with the son getting slapped by the judge, jury, and lawyers. While going through lifeguard training, one of the workers told us a story about why we have to always get consent on children. A lifeguard that he knew had gotten a drowning child out of a pool and saved his life. The mother tried to sue the lifeguard for putting her child on the ground too hard. Luckily, the lifeguard won, but it made me a bit scared to be a lifeguard. I defended a guy who sold his house. He got sued by the buyers. The buyers were told by a neighbor that there was an underground storage tank on the property, and that it had leaked oil. The neighbor was convinced it was there. We went to trial a year later, and the buyer never could produce any evidence of an underground tank or contamination. The jury gave him $13,000 anyway. You're a crappy lawyer? He's either a crappy lawyer or a crappy liar. Either way, something smells about this story. Why the crap would the neighbor say crap like that? Well, I think we've all got a little soiled by these various puns, people. Let's move along, shall we? One of my friends had to defend a government agency from a seemingly serious lawsuit. The issue was about a kindergarten, this is Australia, so it's a preschool age, near a government work site. And the issue was some white trash B-words for kids have breathing issues from dangerous levels of dust. Anyway, my friend isn't high on the ladder, so a lot of the legwork fell to her. She had to go to the suspect site and found it to be a park undergoing massive landscaping. After convincing the bogan that the kids needed a medical examination if they want to pursue the case in a meeting, she notices the mother is a massive chain smoker. This basically led to her correctly guessing that the kids' breathing problems were caused by their mother smoking non-stop all day. Evidence to corroborate it includes the medical examination and 3 incidents where the fire department were called to the bogan's house for fires caused by smoking in bed. In conclusion, mother tries to sue for health issues of children, only to be found as leading cause of said health issues. My childhood friend almost got sued for shooting his friend with an airsoft gun. The pellet hit skin and made the kid go crying to his dad. His dad was some big-shot lawyer and had the kid arrested for being in possession of a firearm or weapon on his property. He later wanted to sue my friend's family to pay for his son's injuries. The injury was a red welt mark, nothing serious. The stupid part was that the lawyer's son invited them over to play with the airsoft guns in the first place. My aunt, Jane, has a medical condition. Without revealing too much, she is an adult but considered a minor because of her dependent status. When she gets sick, she needs to go to the hospital. One day she had an episode and the hospital didn't have enough expertise to handle her case. They said she needed to be taken to the capital city for treatment. Her immediate family were all out of the country, so my grand-aunt, her aunt, hired a service to take her to the capital for treatment. When Aunt Jane's siblings found out about what happened, they decided to sue my grand-aunt for kidnapping. According to them, my grand-aunt had kidnapped Aunt Jane and taken her to the hospital against her will. By the way, my grand-aunt actually got written permission from Aunt A's mother. Now, we live in a third world where bribes sway the hand of justice, so that trial actually lasted a few years. We won in the end, but I get really angry when I think about the lawyers who took their case. My dad, an old ridiculous man, tried to sue McDonald's because he tripped over those stumps in the parking lot. McDonald's. And to make it worse, they were actually really kind to him and got him a first aid kit. Wow, I think this is the first time I've been so ashamed to be related to him, and trust me, there have been a lot of times. Any case where someone's life is saved and they sue the person who saved them. That crap is messed up. That's the main reason why Good Samaritan laws exist. Otherwise, nobody would save anyone else's life due to fear of lawsuit. In some states, the Good Samaritan laws do not really provide much, if any, protection to a would-be rescuer. Good God, is this an American thing? Because that's absurd. I've never heard of anything like that happening over here. A middle-aged woman lost her footing in the parking lot of my significant other's work the other day. At first, she said she was fine, just scraped her knee, etc. But as soon as she sat down, she started coming up with a laundry list of imaginary injuries she had suffered. Oh, she hit her head. And oh, she's feeling nauseous and faint. Oh, and she has a bad hip and shoulder and back. She's in so much pain she can barely move. Significant other called 911 as is protocol. The EMT gave her a clean bill of health and said that there was nothing wrong with her. A skinned knee, sure, but that was it. She refused an offer to go to the hospital, saying she felt better now. Well, 10 minutes later, after the EMTs leave, she and her husband are out taking pictures in the parking lot. She's walking just fine, but guess who's probably going to sue? The sad part is they're going to get a settlement even though it's total BS. It's not worth the time and trouble to let the case go to court, so the lawyers will just throw a few $1,000s her way to get her to go away. Apparently this happens pretty often. People know they'll get paid off, so they turn on the waterworks over even the tiniest injury or slight. Friend had a paternity or child support case walk through his door that was mind-blowing. Couple A and Couple B go out for a night on the town. They're drinking and riding around in a car and decide to get frisky. Only problem? They only have one condom between them. So, being the bright young minds they are, they decide to share the condom. Couple A uses condom first, passes it back to Couple B. Dude in Couple B turns the condom inside out and uses it. Girl in Couple B becomes pregnant with dude from Couple A's kid. Welcome to the South. You can't make this crap up. Dude, Guy B was a frickin' moron for turning the condom inside out. What he should have done was worn it normal, then sued Guy A for making him gay when Guy A's splooge touched his junk. I'm from the South too. I'm not a lawyer, but when I was a kid, our neighbor decided to sue us over 4 inches of land. So on that side of the house, we had a wooden catwalk that led into our backyard. It was in poor condition when we bought the house, so a few years later, my parents decided to hire some contractors to repair it. Within a week of them finishing it, my parents got a letter from a lawyer which stated that our neighbor was suing them for infringing on his property with this new catwalk. A surveyor was hired and a 3 to 4 year legal battle ensued. The end result? Yes, the catwalk was 4 inches over the property line. However, the old catwalk had been rotting and sloping on that side before the work, so it was probably more than 4 inches over before. My parents had to pay to bring in a new crew and rectify that problem. He built a fence on his front lawn right along the property line, all the way down the road. His wife vanished. We suspect that she left him for being a crazy butthole, and his kids stopped visiting. He moved out about a year after winning the court case. Oh, I almost forgot the best part of the story. He finally decided to settle. He changed the terms of what he wanted to something agreeable because, and I crap you not, the spirits told him it was time. I almost feel bad for the guy because he clearly has some sort of dementia, but he made my parents' lives a living hell for 3 or 4 years. One time when I was 17, I was backing out of my driveway to go to school. There was almost no traffic then because it was before the average Joe left for work in the morning. I checked to see if it was clear, and it appeared that it was. Someone thought that would be a great time to park behind me on the other side of the small road so they could let their kid wait for the bus stop. I just happened to be looking around my opposite shoulder, so I dinged the side of their bumper. They were driving an SUV, didn't want to get insurance involved, and didn't seem to be annoyed, etc. I know, I was a dumb teenager and my dad told me it'd just be cheaper to pay for the damages out of pocket rather than be an unsafe driver for the next 40 years. I ended up paying them like $500 or something since the damage was simply cosmetic. It seemed high in my mind, but that was because I wasn't used to how high car parts can go, like thousands of dollars for a molded plastic kind of thing. Fast forward a few weeks, I'm served with papers to a lawsuit. Apparently the driver and kid are claiming medical damages and many thousands of dollars of damage to their vehicle, including replacing most of the front end. They were asking $500,000 or something. My insurance company said that since I didn't report it, there probably wasn't much they could do, but they'd check. A week after that, an insurance company agent asks me to come in and talk with him, which I do. I'm completely straight with them. They aren't annoyed at all, they just want to get my side of the story and show me the proof the other people had that this story was as they say. First, they had an invoice from a garage that was nearly unreadable. Each line item was for multiple thousands of dollars. Among them, some of the ones we could read were things like replaced engine and repaired/welded frame. Second, the kid had some kind of surgery done between the accident and the lawsuit, which they claim was the direct result of said accident. What was it? The kid developed appendicitis a week or 2 later. Third, the driver was undergoing treatment at a chiropractor and had a note from them saying they would never be able to lift heavy objects or stand for more than a few minutes at a time, and would probably be in severe pain due to pinched nerves and slipped discs caused by the accident. So I'm sitting there with all these images of being in debt forever running through my head, and the insurance agent is kind of giggling at those things. I was kind of shocked, but they walked me through why each piece of their proof was just an attempt to look serious enough to get a settlement deal on the table. Sure enough, they were suing for $500,000, but willing to settle for $100,000 because the family was so exhausted in dealing with the accident. The insurance company had someone inspect my car, and they were able to say without hesitation that the car had not been through an accident like the kind the people were claiming. They wanted to examine their vehicle too, but apparently said vehicle had been given to relatives out of state because it brought back such bad memories. Also, on a hunch, they looked at the background of the people involved. What do you know? It turns out they just got a big settlement for another serious car accident in another state. A little more digging was done, and the police were notified. I don't know if they ever went to jail for it, but apparently their proof was fake. The kid did get his appendix removed, but their freaking health insurance paid for that. My dad is a lawyer, so I have a couple of these. My dad was once asked to represent a man who tripped on the sidewalk due to a tree. He said he walked that sidewalk every day. The time he walked it and tripped, apparently a tree jumped out in front of his path and tripped him. Second one is a little weirder. A woman called my dad for legal advice because there was a spider in her baby's diaper package. When asked, she said she put that diaper with the spider in it on her baby. She wanted to sue Pampers. My dad hung up on her there. I saved the best for last. My dad represented a taxi driver for when he got into a car crash. Everything went like a normal case. My dad won the case for the driver very quickly. As he was with the guy for payment, he found out that the taxi driver was blind. You heard that right, he was 80% blind in both eyes. No one found out except my dad, not the taxi driver's clients, not the jury, not the judge, not even the DMV. He walked out of my dad's office with one of those tapping sticks and drove home. I mean, that last story isn't so much stupid as outright ridiculous, and for a completely different reason than the others. My goodness. Not a lawyer, but I'm a client manager at a law firm. I once had a man call in trying to sue the local Popeyes because they gave him a large order of wings instead of a small order of thighs. He had witnesses to prove it and everything. So basically, you're the last line of defense between the lawyers and the insanity of the real world. Lady calls 911 and says the dump truck in front of her is spilling gravel all over the road and her truck. I ask her if any damage is done to her vehicle and she says she doesn't know. Officers find the dump truck, follow it about a mile and don't observe any gravel spilling out. They pull it over anyway to get driver, company, insurance information, assuming she wants to make a damage to property report. I ask the lady to stop with the officers or bring her vehicle to the police department so they can see the damage and do the report for her insurance company. She tells me she doesn't have time because her daughter is late for a singing lesson. 2 weeks later, after a hailstorm, she came to the PD to make a report for the damage, but she is driving another vehicle. She claims her truck is already at the repair shop and the estimate is $3,000. Officer tells her he can't make a report for damage without seeing the vehicle, but he goes ahead and makes an information-only report to appease her. Now she's trying to sue the PD because the officers won't testify that the dump truck is the cause of the damage. Kind of like, I'm going to sue you unless you perjure yourself. Good lord. Guy sued the creators of Budweiser because he suffered emotional distress, mental injury, and financial loss because he didn't nail beautiful women like the adverts promised, thus causing him to consume more and more. The judge basically told him to take it like a man like the rest of us borderline alcoholics do. My friend had a client who wanted to sue his parents for emotional abuse. That abuse consisted of giving the client a name he didn't like. It's not even as if the name was one of those ridiculous ones. It was a perfectly ordinary one, if a little uncommon in our country. Needless to say, my friend didn't agree to represent the guy. My fire tech teacher has a great story he told me of. He worked with the fire department, and they're called in to a car accident. The first car is smashed in, and they get the jaws of life. Open it up, one man survived, and his 9-month pregnant wife was decapitated. Another firefighter proceeded to do an emergency C-section and save the man's baby. Well, after finding out he was out of scope for doing so, the man sued the firefighter. He sued him for saving his only child. For those who asked, the guy won the lawsuit. The firefighter lost his license, uncertain if he was jailed, and yeah, so he lost. Worked in law firms for 10+ years. Heard a great story where a guy comes in with his wife and teen daughter to discuss defense against a claim that the dad fiddles the daughter. The guy basically says, "It's my daughter, I can do what I want with her." The mum says nothing. The lawyer was disbarred for vaulting the table and punching the dad. My sister was sued by this elderly woman. It was her senior year of high school toward the end of the year. She's leaving school and takes a right onto the road. Her and the elderly woman got into a car accident and the police officer found my sister at fault. Within a year later, my parents learn that the old lady is suing them for doctor appointments and such. When it comes to the case, we find that the elderly woman had been taking prescription pills that affect motor skills. Worst case, the pills were in the daughter's name, not hers. Not only that, but the old lady had been speeding in a 35-mile-per-hour school zone. She actually admitted to it. Parents didn't have to pay a dime to the old broad. Not a lawyer, but I did get sued once. For child support. My deadbeat dad ex-husband called after 5 years of no contact and no financial support. He's dying. Kids see him. The younger one wants to stay with him for a while. She stays with him and his new wife and daughter. They live in the same town. He miraculously gets better. 4 months in, I get a letter from his lawyer for child support. Says I'm a deadbeat mum, he's had her for years without any support from me. I walk into the remediation meeting with school and medical records, divorce and support papers, history of his non-payment through the state, and of course, proof of his other daughter who still lived with me. Apparently he forgot to tell his lawyers a few things. Younger daughter is dumped back on my doorstep the next day, and I never hear from his lawyer again. That was over 20 years ago, and he's still alive. A lady tried suing a train company because her husband was killed by one of their trains. Sounds responsible? No. Her husband came to a stop at the crossing, then decided to drive his truck through the barrier and was hit by the train. In the process, parts of this man went flying into Kingdom Come and landed on some lady's windshield. She sued the man's family for damages and because it traumatized her. Oh my gosh. As ridiculous as the first lawsuit in the story is, I can't help but think that suing the man's family for having the nerve to die in a traumatic way and leave his wife alone isn't the most humane course of action. In fact, it may be why the First Lady sued in the first place, to maybe recoup some of the losses. I could go on all day, but I'll limit it to the most egregious two. I'm a retired public defender. Before I started with the PD's office, I worked briefly for a private firm where I encountered these two cases. 1. A single-parent mum had to fly out of town for training for her job. Deadbeat dad wasn't paying child support because he claimed he couldn't find a job. This will be important later. Mum left her 4-year-old daughter with her sister, the child's aunt. While mum's away, the aunt takes the girl to Chuck E. Cheese. A repairman at Chuck E. Cheese opens an access panel to repair the pulleys that operated the giant puppets. Repairman goes in back to get a tool and leaves the access panel open. The girl puts her hand in the opening and her fingers are severed. She is rushed to the ER and the docs want a parent. With mum out of town, deadbeat dad is called in. After consulting with the docs and the girl in the OR, deadbeat dad calls the law firm from the waiting room and wants to know if he has a case. He wants to include lost wages as part of his damages. I left for public defender soon after and I don't know how the case ever resolved. 2. A 28-year-old man marries a 16-year-old girl, much to the dismay of her parents. In this state, a 16-year-old can marry without parental consent if she is pregnant, which she was. He proves to be a chronically unemployed and abusive husband. The mother-in-law convinces the girl to take the baby and come home. With her gone, husband of the year goes out and finds a high school girl. The wife changes her mind and returns to her husband with the baby. Months later, husband is served in a paternity suit from the high school girl he was with during the wife's absence. He makes an appointment with me and wants to know if I can force the mother-in-law to pay the child support to high school girl, since it was the mother-in-law's fault that the wife wasn't there for him to have fun times with, therefore forcing him to seek out high school girl. We didn't take the case. Fairly unrelated to the question, but I rarely get to tell this story. I was picking up an old lady, 80-ish, for church one Sunday morning because my parents had asked me to. I was like 17 at the time. The lady doesn't live too far from the church, so I say sure, why not, and proceed to pick her up from her house. I pick her up and take her to church, no problem. I sleep through the service and take her back because that's just what you do for people you give rides to a place. When I got there, she slipped out of my car, Explorer, and fell to the ground and she started wailing that something was broken. So I get an ambulance over there and of course it's her hip. No big deal, happens all the time to old people. They patch her up and I think replace her hip because it was like number 3 for her. And so a few weeks later, I found out that the lady is suing me for her falling out of my car. What the hell? So I bring it up to my insurance company and they actually settled with her for an extraordinary amount of money. $200,000, I believe. What? How is this even a thing? Anyone? $200,000 was probably the cost of her medical bills and she had to sue you to get your auto insurance to cover it. Her health insurance may have refused to pay, and this could have been her only option. The same thing happens when someone injures themselves in your home and can't afford the medical bills. They sue you to get your homeowners/renters insurance to cover it. I'm sure my lawyer thinks it's a bit ridiculous a girl physically attacked me over a $1 burrito while she was blackout drunk and is now trying to press assault and battery against me when all I did was shove her back a few times in self-defense. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.